In this tutorial, you will learn how to integrate your Spring Boot with React. We will use React as front end, where we will fetch the users from the REST API in the backend, and we will use MySQL database to show a list of users. So getting started with Spring Boot plus React by Aliyu Sahabo Adam Coding Techniques, we will first start by creating a Spring Boot project, and then later we will create a new React app step by step. So let's do this together. So here in the SJS, let's create a new project for our React. Create a new project, Spring Starter project, click next. So I previously created a React app, so it uses the last creation that I did. So the name of this project is React app, and then I have the package as Coding Techniques, and this the artifact React app. This is the description as React tutorial, the package name as Coding Techniques, the name of this channel. So I am using Marvin, where the Java version here is 17, and we are using the language Java. So let's go next and add the dependency. So in the dependency, I need Spring Boot Dev Tool for the live reload, and then Spring Web, it is web application, and then Spring Data JPA and the MySQL driver. So this is all we need for this tutorial. Let's click finish. So then our import is getting started, which is the Spring Boot app. Okay, so here is the React app now. Okay, the next thing we will do is to configure MySQL database. Okay, so let's do this together. Before configuring MySQL database in application.properties, here in MySQL workbench, let's create a new schema. So the name of the schema is student. This is the database. Apply. So finish. Here is our student database. Okay, now let's go back to the new initialized project, and here it is. So we have in the resource, we have application.properties. This is where we will configure the MySQL database. So first we need to define the data source username and the data source password. So let's start by Spring. We have Spring the data source. Okay, then URL. So this, we will set this to JDBC, the name of the database MySQL, and then followed by localhost and the port where it is running 3306, followed by the name of the schema that we just created, student. So this is what the data source URL will look like, and then we also need the Spring data source username and password. Spring data source username. So we set this to root, but this depends on the password and the username of your data source. You will add your own. and then we also need Spring the data source, the password in my case is root as well. Then we also need Spring the JPA Hibernate DLL auto, and let's add this. It will automatically update the schema when we run the program based on the entity. So let's add the Spring dot JPA dot Hibernate DLL auto. We will set it to update, and we have another properties that we will set two properties, which is login level of Hibernate SQL and type. So first let's add this login level then .org dot Hibernate then program is from the 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 program is debug as to debug as to debug as we said debug as okay. We will add is the org level of J the so pin so let's add this login dot level dot org dot Hibernate type Skype equal to set it. So okay, so now we configuration will have the next thing we will do. Okay, now let's go to React app which is done, which is the starter class. So it is opening. Once it's open, then we run the application. So let's run this. To make sure we doesn't have any problem, so save and run. Later we will create the entity class for the student and rerun and test the schema again. So our application started on the port 8080 successful. Okay, so the next thing we will do is to create the entity class with. So now let's create the entity class. First let's create a new package model and then click finish. So now let's create a new class, and the name of the class is student. Okay, so we will annotate this class with at entity annotation. Okay, at entity. Okay, so this class is an entity class, and then first let's have the private at id, and we will pass the at generated value generated value to long. So this is the primary key of this student entity, and it will generate automatically. So we will have private string face name, which is student name, face name, and then private string last name. So we will have also private string department. Okay, department. So this is enough for the demonstration, and let's create the constructor for this class. Go to the source and then generate constructor. First, let deselect all and generate no arg constructor. So let's generate a constructor again with the argument source. Generate constructor using field excluding the ID, first name, last name, and department. Okay, this is enough. And then so we will add the getters and setters. We will also generate these. Source, generate getters and setters. So this is enough for the student class, and let's save this. Okay, so the next thing, we will handle the repository and the controller, then service. So let's do this together. For the repository, let's create a new package face and then call this repository. So click finish, then let's create new class. So sorry, it is interface repository, new interface. So the name of the interface is the student repository. So let me take this down. So we have this interface student repository, and this will extend root repository. So by extending this class will have access to method that operate on the database. The st we will pass the student and then this will be long. So we finish with this class, with this interface. So we will create a controller, then the service. So now let's create another package, call this controller. So click finish, create new class and call it student controller. Okay, this is okay. click finish. Then we will annotate this with @raise controller, and then followed by the @request mapping. So this will be API. Okay, so then we will auto-add the user repository, auto-add, which is student repository, student repository. Let's set this to private because it is only accessible inside this class, student repository. Okay, then we will also have a method at get mapping. So let name the student. We will use this to fetch the student. Okay, public iterable will pass student. Okay, so let name this method as student, the name of the method. Okay, this will return find all. We will find all the users, student repository dot find all. So this is the implementation of this class so far, and we will use this method to fetch the users in the front end. Okay, now let's go to the service. For the service, we create a new package service as well, which is not necessary. New service. Okay, so inside this we will have a service class, and we will name it database loader. We will use command line runner to just save a couple of students. Let's name this class database loader. Database loader. So we have this class, and we will annotate this class with @component, then followed by we will implement command line runner, where we will save a couple of students just directly. So implement command line runner. So we have a method at unimplemented method. So we will specify what we will save here inside this method, and we will have it save after all the bin is initialized. Okay, then this is where we will see this in the console as well. So first, let's start with adding the student repository to this class, which we will use to save the student. So let's add private final student repository. Okay, so let initialize this. generate constructor using this field. Okay, so we have this. Now let's save a couple of students and run this method and check the database. Okay, so let's delete this. We will use this student repository save. Here we will save the entity, which is student. We'll add new student. So it is searching for the student. Okay, so we have this with the parameter first name, last name, and the department. So let's add this first name Aliyu, then we will add the last name as Sahabo, followed by the department, and I will set this to mathematics. Okay, so let's duplicate this and change. Okay, so I will add this Yasir Yusuf, and I will set the department to physics. Okay, so let's run this and check the database. Okay, so when the program works as expected, we will just go back to the front end. So you see we inside into student. These are the Hibernate SQL that we set in the application, the properties. Okay, now let's check the database and see if it works as expected. Okay, so you refresh the database page, and here we have a student. Double click, so you see we have Aliyu Sahabu, department mathematics, and we also have Yasir Yusuf, department physics. So now the next thing we will do is we will start having the front end. Okay, let's do this together, where we will fetch these users. Okay, so before fetching these users, first what we will do is let's try to access. Okay, let's try to access these endpoints where we have the student controller. Let's try to access this and see what we will have. We will have the JSON representation of the data that we have passed. Okay, now before continue to the front end, let's access this. Okay, so let's go to the local host. We have API followed by student. So you see the JSON representation of what we have. The ID is 2, and the ID of the Yasir, the ID here is 1, and the ID of the Yasir is 2. First name, last name, and all this. Okay, So we will use these to fetch the names from our front end. So before continue to the front end, if you doesn't have the npm, you need npm, which is Node Package Manager, and the Node.js, and here you can install it on your PC. So, and if you are ready, then we will create a new React app together. So let's do this. Okay, now to create a new React app, here in the react.js.org we have this command how to create a new React app. You see we have this command, then followed by the name of the app. This is what we will use to create a new React app, and then after creating new React app, we will redirect to the directory of the app and then start the application. Okay, now let's go back to the VS Code. I already create a folder in the desktop. So now to start, first I will open this folder. Inside this folder, okay, so let me check this folder in the desktop. I name the folder React, so select the folder. Okay, you can create your own folder. Okay, so let me remove this. Here is the folder that I just create. Okay, so once I go to the terminal, go to the new terminal, as you can see here. So this is in the terminal. We will create the React app. Okay, so as you can see, this is the directory desktop, then the React folder. So once I paste this, you see npx create React app. This my app is the name of the app that I will be creating, and if you want, you will change the name of the app, but I will just continue with the my app is okay. Okay, once you have this, you will click enter. So by clicking enter, it will start creating the new React app. It will take a little time, so it will create the React app, and once it creates, we will see the React app here. Okay, so as you can see here, the React app is created. We have this React app, it finished creating, and you can see the happy hacking here. Then here we redirected to the app directory using the cd my app, and then start the application using npm start. Okay, so now it is starting. So once the application started, it will render the app.do. So here is the app.js before the React app start. Okay, so we have this app.js where we have this element, and it is called JSX. So previously we used react.createElement to do this work, but we have this simpler format using the JSX to render and have this code like this. And this is the app that this is what it will render. And here in the index.js, this is where it imports the app that you can see. So let's go back to the app.js. In the app.js, you see we exported the app here. So, and this is inside the index.js, we imported the app here and then use the render to render the app. So as you can see, this is a root that we use to render, which is the element inside the HTML. So index.html, we have a div here, so we will render the app inside this root. Okay, so as you can see, we also have the app.css where it have the CSS file for the app. Okay, and then let's go to the index.css. We also have the index.css. okay, so once the app is started, it will render the app in the browser. So now once it's rendered, we will start writing our code. So it takes a little time. Here we have the app started successfully, as you can see, and it started in this port 300. okay, so now let's check the browser. You see what it rendered here. This is the app.js, and once we try to modify this, you can see it will change. Now let's go back to the React. Then let me delete this and have some h2 to or h1 to have hello. Okay, when we save this, it will render in the browser. So when webpack compile. Okay, so let's go to the browser. You will see that hello that we have. Okay, now what we will do next is that we will import the use effect and use state, which will allow us to use the fetching, which will allow us to fetch the student that we have in our Spring Boot app. Okay, so we will import it inside here. We will be able to use it inside this app, but for now I will delete this. We need to render something different, and let me comment this to remove this error, and later we will have something inside our return out. Okay, now what we will do next, normally in React class we use the this.setState, where we use the state, we manipulate the state, we have the updater. But in this case, this is not a class, this is a function. So because this is a function, so React provides a way to use state in a function, and this is the use effect and use state, and you can see how we will use this in a second. So first, let's import the method from the React. We have the React, then we specifically need the use effect, then use state. Okay, so the use effect we use to this method to fetch data. Inside this method we will perform some site work, and then this use state we will initialize and have the updater that will update this. We will initialize some values, and then let's use the const and see how we use this. So first we will have the value student, so which is the initial value, and we will have the method set student, which will update the student with value set student. Okay, then this will be equal to use effect use state, sorry. Then inside this use state we initialize this as with this array. Okay, so initially this we have nothing here, and later we will use the set student to have something which we will fetch from our Spring Boot app. Okay, so using this API. Okay, so let's go back to the React app. We define this as I said. Now let's use the use effect to perform some operation which will fetch the user. Okay, we need the use effect method. So this method, first let's get inside this method. This method receive a function and an array. So first we need a function, comma, then array like this. So inside this function we will pass the operation that will fetch the student from our API. Okay, inside this, and then we also have this, and this we will pass, if we want, we will pass some operation that will trigger this use effect to rerun based on the function of our application. But in this case we doesn't have something that will trigger this to rerun, then so we will leave it empty. Okay, so now let's fetch using the we'll fetch this using the fetch, then okay, so here we will pass the endpoint that we have. Okay, let's go back to, as you see here is where Aliu, Sahabo and Yasir 2. Okay, so now let's copy this endpoint, this URL. Okay, so go back to the fetch and pass it here. So using it will fetch our on this URL the student, our student on this URL. Then we will pass the method then where we'll add some operation on this fetch student. The operation that we will have here, let me use the response, and you can, this is just a variable, you can use the name you like, which you will understand as you write the code. So we need the response here, we receive this as JSON, we call this method. Okay, and we also use then again where we will pass this JSON inside our, we will set it to this set student, so that this what we initialize here now will have some values. Okay, now so you see we will let name this variable as data, so we call the set student and pass the data. So this is the pipe through which it passes, and then the last thing we need here is the catch, where if we have error fetching the student, we will log this. Okay, error, I name this variable as error console dot error. So we'll pass something like error while fetching data, error while fetching data. So and then we pass the, we concatenate with the error message. Okay, so we will have something like this. So we finish with the implementation of the use effect. All we need to is to close this like this, and then as well. Okay, so now let's have, even if we have doesn't have this, it's okay. So now let's remove this comment. Now it's time to render. Once we have this, then we will render. Okay, we will use list to render this. First, let's have the h2, where we will say that this is the list of student. List of student. Then we will fetch the student from the student that we have now. Once it fetch, then this will have some values. We set this. Okay, now let's go back to this. We will use the list, as I said. To pass the function or to use function inside here, we need to add this curly bracket inside here. You will pass function. Okay, so let's use the student. So inside the student dot map, we will map each and we will pass it to our UL. Okay, map. Then let name the student, which each student we will pass the student and it will render. Okay, so okay, so we'll pass the UL inside this. So the UL will be UL. So inside this we will pass a list. Okay, so let me drop this down because we did not finish the implementation of this method. Okay, so inside this UL, let me pass the key. The key will be the user ID. As you can see here in the, we have the ID. Each have the ID, which is the primary key that is generated in the database. Okay, now key equal to, we passed student dot ID. Okay, so and inside here we will pass the LI. So we have first name, last name, and then the part. So let me pass. So before adding this, we will carefully look at the how we name this. You see, we name this first name, last name. This is the convention that we use when naming, so we will use the same when fetching. Okay, so first let me check what the error that we have here. So we have expected the closing bracket. So we have the closing bracket here, but let me figure out what it need. Okay, so sorry, we need a div here, div. So we will pass this inside this div. Okay, so this is it. We doesn't have this arrow anymore. Okay, so we will use student dot first name, and we will pass this inside the curly bracket like this. Okay, then followed the same thing, student dot last name, then followed by student to department. Okay, let's check out how we write the department here. Okay, so we have this noun, and each user will have an ID here in the UL. So as you can see, we finish with this implementation, but once we save this, we will have some error while fetching because we doesn't have at cross origin here. So we are trying to access from the port 300 to 8080, so which will not access without the at cross origin, and we will see this. Let's go back to our React. You see we have the list of students but without the list. So when you inspect, so let's inspect this in the console. So you see we have access to fetch at this is denied, has been blocked by course policies, which is cross origin resource sharing. And you see we have error while fetching, failed to fetch. Okay, now this is what we pass here. While fetching, if we have an error, it will throw. Okay, now the only thing to solve this problem, we will go back to so here we will pass the at cross origin, so on okay, cross origin. Here we will pass the origin. So which origin here is that? Let's copy the local host 300 and then go back to our Spring Boot. So we will fetch this here, and this will be inside a string like this. Okay, so when we save these changes, so it will able to access our resource that we have here, which is the endpoint. Now it is rerunning. Okay, when we save this again, go back to so okay, as you see we have these Aliyu, Sahabo, Adam, we have Yasir, Yusuf. So you may ask why we have the name duplicated. That is because here inside the database loader we have this one. Once the application run, then it will save this name. So it run twice when I saved, so that is it saved the name twice. Okay, you see we have this. Okay, and this is the end of this tutorial. This is what we have built, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this channel for more videos in the future.